Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, drone pilots, wherever you are, whenever you are. This is a bonus video. I promised you last year that if you took my class, I would teach you how to put Star Wars tune onto the boot up sound of your flight controller. That's going to be the topic of today's video. This is totally optional, not necessarily to fly the drone. As usual, I have some instructions on the course website. We'll download that file and work through it. Wi-Fi, drone motor, music. Download that file. Open the downloads folder. There's the directions. Again, props off. So there is a beeper on the drone that you can take off. It beeps a certain tone. You can't change the tone. However, the ESCs send voltages to the motors, and they can make the motors move and dance. And they can make the motors vibrate at whatever frequency they want, including the audio frequency between 100 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So when the ESC wants to, it can send voltages that make the motor vibrate and play sounds, and play all the notes, I guess, that you could hear. So most ESCs play a specific startup tone that the motors sing. What we're going to do is customize that startup tone. So we have to adjust the firmware on the ESCs. We have 8-bit ESCs with BLHeli-S firmware pre-installed. Unfortunately, that one does not allow changing the tune. All we want to do is have fun. So there's another fork of BLHeli-S called Blue Jay. We need to burn that one onto the ESCs. Then we can pick whatever tune we want. So it's a simple process in principle, but it could be could have very bad consequences. If you don't do it right, your motors won't spin. So this is totally optional. So let's do it. So what do I want to do? So first I'm going to power on the radio just to make sure everything is stable and happy. I'm going to plug the battery into the drone, and it's going to do all sorts of beep, 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 beep. So just wait until all the beeping is done. And one of the beeping is the ESCs making the motors beep. That's the music. The other one, the doo-doo-doo, that's the flight controller beeper. That's the flight controller beeper. Okay, so hopefully the beeping is done. So the drone is not connected to the computer yet. I'm going to plug in the USB cable between the computer and the drone. Windows goes beep beep. We're not going to use Mission Planner for this. Let's just check that the device manager thinks that there's a COM port available. RGPilot COM5. Okay. So no Mission Planner. Then how are we going to connect to the speed controllers?
Transmitter battery low.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're going to connect the
Transmitter battery low.
Okay. Now I guess I have to turn the transmitter off.
Receiver still connected. Trim center.
Or I could just plug the battery in. Let's do that and charge it. Okay, 1 minute. I'll just get the battery charging so that doesn't complain. Hopefully the transmitter will be quiet now. All right. Lots of great safety features. Okay, so where were we? Oh, we just plugged in the USB cable between the drone and the computer. So how do we get the computer to flash the firmware to the ESCs? Because the ESCs are not connected to the computer. The ESCs are connected to the flight controller. The flight controller is connected to the computer. Well, in the last video, we set up the flight controller so that we can pass the signals through. It's called pass-through. It's a function of RGPilot. So we actually can pass through the flight controller directly to the speed controllers by doing what I'm about to tell you. We need to make sure we have the right COM port confirmed, which we did. And then we go to this URL. This is the firmware flasher, which runs inside of the browser. So it's a nice new way of flashing firmware. And so we need to select the port, COM5, connect. Now we're connecting to the ESCs. And there's a little log here. It says we've connected to the flight controller, but we haven't read the settings from the ESCs yet. So let's read the settings from the ESCs. And when it tries to read the setting, the ESC reboots and starts playing its boot sound, and then it can't talk to. So we only got 2 ESCs connected, so let's try that again. Now we got all 4 ESCs connected. So this is the name of the ESC, JH30. The firmware is BlueJ0210. It's set for 48 kilohertz update rate. I guess you can change the motor direction, so if you wire it wrong, there may be a way to not have to rewire it. I don't know about any LEDs. And then there's some parameters here we'll get to in a moment. So we need to go back to our directions and see what the next step is. Obviously, it's to flash the firmware. So we went to that website. It loaded in the browser some code to flash firmware. We connected. We read the parameters. Now on the bottom, flash all ESCs. Flash all ESCs. So we want to pick BlueJ instead of BL Heli. It already figured out the model of the ESC we have. We don't change that. We're going to use version 021. And the frequency of update is 48 kilohertz flash. Now it'll flash that firmware to all 4 of those ESCs if all goes well. And there's a terminal up here that gives the terminal output. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Okay, seems to have worked. So we've now flashed BlueJ onto the ESCs. Now, BlueJ has some parameters for how the motors are controlled, which for the purposes of this video, I don't care. But if you ever want to do racing and you want to adjust the throttle response curve, then you can adjust these parameters. I found that if you get them wrong, the motor won't even spin at all. So I played around with it, and these are the parameters. We'll make this 1248, 1240 instead of 1248. And so set all these if they're not already set. And then go down here. Just set everything here the way I've shown it. And it's also screenshotted in the instruction file. So we're going to do all that, and then we're going to write those settings to the ESCs. And it says updating ESC 1, 2, 3, 4, finish. So now we're done. So now we have custom BlueJ firmware on the ESC. Well, Professor Burke, what about my music? I'm glad you asked. Open Melody Editor. Select a melody. So these are the pre-programmed ones. You can do your own. I had Star Wars on there. Let's see what would be a good one. Ride of the Valkyries. Let's see what it's going to sound like. Okay, except write melodies. Close. So they should be on there. So we're done. Now, the this flashing procedure is a little bit finicky. So whenever you are done, I would recommend just power everything off, disconnect everything before you do anything else. So that's what we're going to do. I guess in the configurator we can say disconnect. Oh, there it is. But then I'll unplug the flight control from the computer. I will unplug the battery from the drone. Now the drone's powered off. The computer's not connected. Now I'm going to plug the battery back into the drone, and we should hear that custom sound. There it is. So that's how you flash a custom sound. So congratulations, you now have a custom sound on your drone.